Let's go to Bendigo and catch up with the Nationals leader, David Littleproud. David, thanks for joining us. Do you think Labor is putting public pressure on the Reserve Bank to lower interest rates next month?
Yeah, well, look, they're desperate for a rate cut. That they see as their only hope of a political pathway to victory. But the reality is that Australians' interest rates have stayed higher for longer because of the ideology that they bring to their economic policy and their energy policy. The reality is that our discretionary spending stopped a long time ago, but our fixed spending didn't. And that was because our energy bills kept going up and we had to keep paying it. They tried to paper over that with $6.5 billion worth of subsidies to try and get to that $275 reduction in energy bill that he promised. Yet saw your energy bill go up by over $1,000. So the reality is they've marched their way through this. We welcome some downward pressure on inflation, but when you see the rest of the world has already got interest rate cuts and have had those reductions to give them that ease of cost of living pressure, unfortunately we're late to the party and we're still not fixing the fundamentals, as in your editorial there. Unless we face into this and understand that our energy grid will actually be one of the biggest determinants of keeping inflation stickier for longer, then we're going to continue to see inflation at a level that could be a lot less. And it's still, just remember, prices have gone up 3.2% over this last quarter, so they're still going up. So what we're saying is there's more action that could happen, and unless you get rid of the ideology and lead into the practical reality, you're going to continue to pay more. We hope that there's a rate cut because you're paying around $50,000 more on the average mortgage than what you were 2.5 years ago when Anthony Albanese took over.
Talking about that pressure on energy prices and the way that feeds into inflation, the Nationals were the last cab on the rank signing up to net zero by 2050. Peter Dutton's recommitted to the Paris Agreement, which is the net zero by 2050 agreement, even after Donald Trump has taken America out of it again. When you've got the world's biggest economy abandoning Paris, and when anybody who's studied the economics and engineering and physics of this can see that net zero by 2050 is not even achievable for Australia, let alone the world, why shouldn't the coalition abandon that plan now and just try to reduce emissions in an economically sensible way without setting an artificial deadline?
Yeah, that's a good question, mate. And the reality is, as you just articulated, the United States is the biggest economy in the world. We're not. We're 27 million people. We're a trading nation. And what we've got to be able to do is to be able to say that if we go against the rest of the world, that it's not weaponised against us. And that means that for my people that I represent, the resource sector and the agricultural sector and regional communities that rely on them, is that they'll have a tariff potentially put on their product that they send out on a boat. They'll also see that their capital could be weighted anywhere from 1.5% to 3%. You think your interest rates are tough now, you add that on because we haven't signed up to an international commitment. So you've actually got to think about our place in the world and the reality and the impacts of us wanting to lead the charge. And while it might sound good, the reality is the people in regional Australia will be the ones that hurt the most because the world will retaliate against us because we're not as big as the United States. So we've got to be sensible about this, and that's why we're not going down an all renewables path. That doesn't make sense. And we don't have to achieve this by 2030. 2050 is a long way off and there's no linear pathway. What you're experiencing today is a linear pathway of what Labor's trying to achieve by 2030. But we've got to weigh this up in the economics of what impact that would have if only the United States has got it, the rest of the world hasn't. We leave ourselves vulnerable. And that's why those in the agriculture sector, in the mining sector as well, have said they sign up to it by 2050 because they don't want to see those punitive financial penalties because we're an outlier in the world because of our place in the world, our size of the world.
David Littleproud, thanks so much for joining us from Bendigo there in central Victoria.